Hey, what's up everybody, Rich Gaming Guy here. Today in this video we're going to unbox and test out the Playzone 2TB retro game console SSD. This advertises over 38,000 retro video games, so I can't wait to dive into this and see what it's got in store for us. Alright guys, here we have our Playzone retro game console 2TB SSD in here, so we're going to go ahead and unbox this. So let's see what we've got. Looks like we've got our SSD here. Now this is not a 2.5-inch SSD. I'm actually going to leave this till last just to go through everything else in here first. So I'm kind of surprised to see that it's not a typical 2.5-inch SATA SSD. So here we have two connection cables. Here we have a USB-A to USB-C, and then here it's a USB-C to USB-C. So not at all familiar with this. This was sent to me, so we are going to see what this looks like within. All right, so this is an external enclosure here, and we obviously have the SSD installed within here. So on one end, we have a unlock and lock switch here. So I assume we can get in here, and obviously, since this is just an external enclosure, we could actually eject then the actual SSD, which is installed within. So the connection here is going to be Type-C, and I assume then we don't need both of these. We would just pick and choose what we want to connect with. I think the majority of us are going to use this USB-A to USB-C here. USB-C side is going to plug directly into the enclosure. This side obviously connects to our PC. And I actually have both of these ports available, so I could go with either route. Most of us probably do. We're seeing a lot more USB-C ports on PCs these days. So let's actually eject this, though. I want to see what we've got going on inside here. Now, I've never used one of these exact enclosures before, so we're going to just go down to the unlock position there, and it actually pops right in. Notice how, let me see if I can, as soon as you hit the unlock on here, it drops down. So I assume we just pull it out the other side like so. So inside here, we have a SuperDog NVMe 2280 2TB SSD. So you can see how the connection is made. Just simply ejects in over here. And if we wanted to, we could just disconnect that by simply sliding this out. No reason to for right now, so we're going to go ahead and slide this back in. Now, of course, I didn't pay attention to which way I ejected this, so let's see if I can get this back in. There we go, and let's make sure that it ejects again. It does. Okay, perfect. So no issue there. So I'm going to go ahead and just simply make that connection. There's literally no instructions in here, so hopefully this boots right up. Now, this is going to be accessed through Windows because we're using RetroBat on here, and it actually says RetroBat and Playnite. Now, I'm not a big fan of Playnite. I know a lot of people love that. I just happen to not be one of them. I just never got into Playnite, but we're going to jump into both sides of this, and we're going to see what this has to offer. So I'm going to go ahead and simply connect this to my PC. In fact, I have it right here. I'm using my Ace Magician mini gaming PC right here. So I'm going to just simply make this connection to the front USB port, just like that. And I'll go ahead and fire this up. I'm going to connect this, of course, to my capture card so you guys can see exactly what I see once this boots up. All right, so once we've attached our SSD to our PC, we're going to navigate down to the bottom of our screen, and we're going to open up our File Explorer. So we're going to let this load in. Once everything's loaded in, on the left-hand column, you're going to notice Playzone. For me, it's the D drive, maybe a different letter drive for you, but you should see Playzone, so double click on it. Once you do, you're going to see a bunch of folders inside here, and there's actually a manual in here as well. But what we're going to do is we're going to go to the Install Me First folder. We're going to double click on that, and we're going to double click on the DirectX Repair. Once we open that up, we're going to go to the application, double click there, and we're going to let this load in. And what we're going to do is we're going to click Check and Repair, and it's just going to go through all of these different files in here, and it's going to check and repair them if they need repairing. So go ahead and hit Check and Repair. It's a really quick process here. And now it's been completed. And for me, it really didn't have to do anything, but we're going to go ahead and click Close right here, or we could just let it time out. It's going to tick down, and you can see everything that it did to your system. So again, for me, it didn't do much of anything. It just checked everything. So we're going to go ahead and click on OK. Click OK again. And now we can quit. So now what we'll do is we'll go back a couple pages, and we're going to go now into either RetroBat or Playnite. Today we're going to go into RetroBat, so we'll double click on the RetroBat folder. And now we're going to go down to the application, which says RetroBat. Just make sure that you have the application, not one of the files or folders. Double click on that. And now we are jumping into RetroBat. All right, guys, so here we are in RetroBat, and this is using the Artflix theme. It's my favorite theme across RetroBat and Batocero. So we're going to dive into the all games list here first. This is our master list for the entire setup here. And if you look closely above the video preview in the bottom left corner, you're going to see a number. That is the total number of titles included in this setup, and that says 38,552 games. Now, we're going to be looking through, I'm not going to dive into every single collection, but we'll jump into a good handful of collections here. And I'm going to be looking for duplicate titles, or maybe even collections that are completely duplicated as well, because we do see that from time to time with setups like this in an effort to just pad the numbers and make it look like a much more attractive number than it really is. Because if you have 38,000 plus titles, but there's 2 duplicate collections, each with 2,000 games in there, then obviously you're going to be adding a lot more titles to your list than there truly are in the actual setup. So we're just going to be on the lookout for that. I'm not saying that's going to be the case here, but something to look for with setups like this. So let's dive into the all games list and just see what the layout is within this collection. And it should be very similar with all the other collections. So right hand side, we're seeing a lot of box art there. We also have some logos in here. So one thing I look for, and because I've set up stuff like this in the past, I know what I like and I know what works better. Notice how each of these with box arts, it's really hard to read. If we're just going off of the list on the right-hand side, I have no idea what this title is, just looking at that small box art on the right-hand side. Obviously, as I highlight each one, then we get the information across the screen on the left-hand side, on the bottom left-hand side, rather. And then we see an enlarged version of that box art, obviously dead centered there. So it is easier to read there, but look how easy this is to read. If we just had the logos or a text list on the right-hand side, we'd be able to read it much better than all of these are pretty good because these are just the logos. But when we get down to, it's weird that they have kind of both of these set up on here. Now, when we get down here, it becomes much more challenging to find the titles. So just something worth noting on here. Certainly not a deal breaker, and you can go in and change the scraped data to, just show logos if you want to. I just think it looks a little bit more polished and it's easier to find titles that you're looking for. So favorites is going to be a collection you set up yourself. You add all your favorite games to that. RetroBat here, this should be access to, I believe, our emulators. Yeah, access to the emulators here. So down here we have 25 titles for Amstrad. We have Final Burn Neo with 98 games. We have MAME with 2,116 games. So let's dive into MAME. That's going to be our classic arcade. So you can see on here, we have mostly box art on the right-hand side. And again, just hard to know exactly what each title is. Like this is a great example. There's nowhere on here where it's legible as to what title this is. So if I'm just scrolling through the list here, I'm going to bypass that because I don't know what it is. In fact, I don't know what any of these are until I really enlarge them on the left side of the screen. So just not the ideal way to do it. Like Bad Dudes reads pretty well because it's got a logo taking up at least half of the box art. Same thing here with Bagman, but titles like this, no idea what it is. So just worth mentioning. Now I'm not seeing a lot of duplicates in here, so that's good. Batman. If I didn't see Batman in there, I wouldn't even, pick up on the actual logo on that one. All right, so 2,116 titles in there. So we have the Atari 2600, 5200, 7800 Jaguar, 64 games here, 65 games there, 95 games there, 855 games for Atari 2600. And if we jump into this collection, same deal. We don't have logos. We have box art, which, again, my feelings on that. So over here, we have 2,449 games. So let's jump into this one. So this one has the logos. And I like that, again, because it reads really well. And there are duplicates in here. I'm not seeing a ton of duplicates. These might be different. Yeah, different versions. So that one's okay. But I did see some duplicates. This one, exactly the same. So we are seeing same thing there. 2 of the same titles, 2 of the same titles, 3 of the same titles. So definitely some duplicates here and there. Not a ton of them so far anyways. And these could be, are there? I don't know. Yeah, we'll back out. So over here, Wonder Swan, 113 games, Wonder Swan Color, 91 games, 146 games, 149 games, MSX1, 605 games, MSX2, 637 games, MSX2 Plus, 9 games, TurboGrafx 16, 288 games, Game & Watch, 59 games, Nintendo Entertainment System, 1,933 games. Now that seems like a high number than what we typically will see on emulation setups like this. So let's just jump in here. I keep hitting the wrong button. So we have box art here as well. Nightmare on Elm Street. Yeah, it's just hard to navigate because you don't see clearly what each title is. Obviously, if you remember the game from back in the day, then you know what you're looking for. That one's missing some scraped data. Some more missing data here. And these could be, yeah, so these are different versions. GameCube edition. Interesting. So we might have some hacks in here as well. All right, so we'll back out of this one. Game Boy here, 1,529 games. And that seems like a high number for original Game Boy. Let's see. So we have foreign releases too. So we're going to have a lot of Japanese titles in here. Like this one. It just would look better not only for the ability to locate titles, but also the fact that you have now the same 3 images or the same image in 3 different places here. It's just not super well polished in my opinion, but still, I mean, if the games work, the games work. It's a good start. So I'm not seeing, just looking for duplicates on here. And it looks like for the most part, everything is checking out. So we'll back out. So here we have Super Nintendo, 761 games, Super Game Boy, 1,289 games. What was the number here? Okay, so it's not the same number. That's good. Sometimes with Game Boy, I've seen, not often, but sometimes they'll pad the game collections and like double up on them. So Nintendo 64, 461 games. Let's go through this. So definitely got some Japanese releases in here. Luckily, the box art for these usually has the logo on there, really in a really readable sort of format. So I don't mind having the box art here as much for N64 as some of the other collections. But still, it would be nice to have the logos there. Not seeing duplicates though, so that's good. So we'll back out of N64. Game Boy Color. All right, there we go. 1,289 games for Game Boy Color. Now, 1,289 games for Super Game Boy. So I guarantee you, let's go back up to the top of this list, which should be 007, 10-pin bowling. What was after 10-pin bowling here? 102 Dalmatians Puppies to Rescue. Let's go over here. 007, 10-pin bowling, 102 Dalmatians. Exactly the same list, exactly the same number. So on this setup of the 38,000 plus games, we can remove at least 1,289 games from that list because these are identical collections here. So you see what I mean about padding numbers. Not a deal breaker, but you know, it makes for a number in the end that isn't accurate. All right, so we've got GameCube here, 98 games for GameCube. Let's see what we've got. So see, this has the logos that I like. Then we have the art for, you know, the cover art over here on the bottom left corner. We've got a video preview for each of these, which we have not seen so far with any of the titles. This is the first one. that has video previews. So I love this layout. This is what I used to do with my setups back when I was doing setups like this for myself. This is what I would do for all of the collections. It just looks super polished. We don't have any duplicates, you know, for each title. It's everything goes together really nicely. So love the way this looks. Loving the selection of games too. We've got Hitman 2 on here. We've got Luigi's Mansion, Mario Golf, Mario Kart Double Dash, Mario Power Tennis, Medal of Honor. Metroid games are in here. We've got some Need for Speed. We've got some NHL. We've got some NBA in here. Red Faction 2. That takes me back. Resident Evils. Now you'll notice there's duplicates here. They're not duplicates though. These are 2-disc games. So no issue there. We've got Sonic Adventure 2 Battle there. We've got Soul Calibur 2. Got some Tom Clancy games. Star Wars Rogue Leader's an awesome one. Star Fox Assault's good. Super Smash Bros. Melee, got to have that. Super Mario Sunshine's up here. So awesome selection of games for GameCube. Game Boy Advance, we've got 2,782 games. That's a lot of games for Game Boy Advance. Let's dive in here. We have got duplicates all over. Seeing that right off the bat here. Didn't have to go down one title before we found duplicates. Now there are a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh games that are different or slightly different. The titles may look similar, so we'll give them a pass on some of those, but not all of them. These are the same ones. So a lot of duplicates in here, which makes sense because this number is just way too high for Game Boy Advance games. So I would say we have probably at least another 1,000 games here that are padding that total number. So we got to take that into consideration. I'm not saying it's a deal breaker or it's necessarily a bad thing. It's not a good thing, but you know, just take into consideration when, you know, using that number as a deciding factor whether to get this or not. Nintendo DS, 78 games. We'll take a glance through here. Now, I am not familiar with DS games. I just wasn't a Nintendo DS gamer myself. A lot of Pokemon games in here, which are super expensive to get the original versions of. So that's where emulation kind of becomes an advantage for a lot of people that just want to play the games, not necessarily collect the games. You can save a fortune, obviously, going this route. So looks good to me here. We'll back out. Nintendo Wii, we've got, oh man, a whopping 2 titles for Nintendo Wii. That's a letdown. I love Wii myself. So we've got Star Wars 3, The Clone Wars, and we've got Donkey Kong Country Returns. I mean, 2 good titles, but where's the rest of them? I love Wii. It's unfortunate that they're not in here. Maybe because you have to have, obviously, you know, the hardware to go along with it. You need a sensor bar and all of that. Not a lot of titles you can play with like a regular gamepad controller, but even still, add them in there. I mean, they don't take much space up, in all honesty, and there's some great titles. In fact, for emulation, I love Nintendo Wii. It's probably one of my top 2 favorite collections for emulating because it performs so well, and I found so many titles that you know, I didn't experience the first time around when the console was new. So Nintendo Wii U, we got 2 titles over here as well, which, you know, it's underwhelming. Mario Kart 8, it's a great title. Legends of Zelda, The Wind Waker HD. So, I mean, good titles, but I'd like to see more of them if possible. So over here we've got 13 games. Now Nintendo Switch, we've got 12 Switch games. That's pretty good. Let's take a look. What do we have in here? So we've got Sonic Forces, we've got Splatoon 2, Super Mario Odyssey, The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening, Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom. So we've got recent games in here too. Borderlands, Game of the Year Edition, Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy, Crash Team Racing Nitro Fueled. This is one of my favorite games to test Switch with because it's a fast-paced game, and racing games are just a great way to test out titles with emulation. So we've got some other titles in here I'm not familiar with, but 12 titles in total, pretty good. We'll be back in here to test out some titles later though. We've got ports in here. Let's take a quick look at the ports. Nothing exciting there. Thomas Wave, 23 games, SG 1098 games, Genesis 1206, Game Gear 406, Genesis 32X 37 games, Sega Saturn 36 games. Let's take a quick look through Sega Saturn. Looks pretty good. We've got Mortal Kombat Trilogy. We've got Resident Evil. Do we have House of the Dead? There we go. House of the Dead's in here. That's good. Ultra Fighter. Virtua Fighter 2. Virtua Fighter Remix. Daytona USA. Awesome title. One of my favorites. So back out. We've got Dreamcast here with 50 games. We've got Virtua Tennis, which is great. Probably my favorite, or top 3 games for Dreamcast. We've got Crazy Taxi 2 and 3. Excuse me, 1 and 2. I don't know where I got 2 and 3 from. I guess I was looking at the D2. That's what I'll tell myself anyways. D2, I don't know if is that a 4-disc game? Probably not. So we might have some duplicates there. Not familiar with it. I've played it, but I don't remember it. Do remember the Uzi though. Evolution 2. Let's see what else. Soul Reaver. Legacy of Kain, Soul Reaver. Marvel vs. Capcom 1 and 2 is in here. We've got Power Stone 1 and 2. Rush 2049 is a good one. Sonic Adventure 1 and 2, Soul Calibur. House of the Dead 2, gotta have that. Street Fighter, Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2, love this version of the game. It's one of my favorite games of all time. So glad to see that made the list. So that's pretty good, 50 games. Sega Naomi here, 54 games. Let's just take here we go. Back to not having video previews and just using box art across the board. So again, you can see now after going through those last few collections how challenging it is to actually locate your titles in this format. So we will back out and continue on. We've got Neo Geo over here, 151 games. Neo Geo Pocket, 82 games. Pocket Color with 89 games. Original PlayStation, 155 games. Let's just take a quick look in here. So we've got the WWF SmackDown games, my favorites. And there are some duplicates. I believe those are double disc games though. So we've got Crash Bandicoot. It looks like all the Crash games. Some Digimon in here, Driver, Final Fantasy. Final Fantasies are multi-disc games, usually. Gran Turismo. We've got, what else? Good selection of titles. All right, we'll back out. We've got PS2 here, 124 games. Now that is extensive on here. That's good to see. Ratchet & Clank. What do we have? Ratchet & Clank and Ratchet & Clank 3. Okay. Didn't want to give us 2. Silent Hill games, Sly 3, Sly Cooper, Soul Calibur 2 and 3. SSX games, some Star Wars in here, Tomb Raider, Tony Hawk Pro Skater 3. Oh, good. WWE SmackDown Here Comes the Pain. Awesome title. One of my favorites as well. Black, Burnout, Dead to Rights. What is that, 1 and 2? Yep, 1 and 2. Some sports games, Final Fantasy, Grand Theft Auto. Good. Good deal. PS2 looks pretty good there. And of course, you can add and remove games too if you wanted to utilize the space to, what you're actually going to enjoy. PSP, we've got, 97 games here. Let's just take a quick glance through here. A lot of times, for if you want to pad the numbers on here, you throw in PSP Minis games into the regular PSP collection, even though it could be its own collection if you wanted it to. So I'm not seeing a lot of PSP Minis games. There are some, but it's not loaded with them, so that's a good sign. Good selection of titles as well. I wasn't huge into PSP, but certainly has some good titles in here. So we have PS3 now. So we have only 4 games here. Let's take a look at what we have. So we've got Catherine here. Vincent likes his girlfriend. Catherine's pretty smart and successful. She's starting to talk about a long-term commitment. I don't know what type of game that is. That seems like a weird one to me. That's got to be like a foreign release or something. I don't know. That seems strange. Just the box art on there seems strange to me. So I don't think I'll be enjoying that one. But we've got God of War Collection. We've got God of War 3 as well for PS3. We've got The Wolf Among Us as well. Never played that, but I've definitely seen it around. So, not a super impressive collection, but it's enough to get you started It's enough to get you into PS3 emulation. Then you could add your own titles in, you know, from there if you wanted to, and if you had enough space to accommodate that. These games, I know from personal experience, they take up a lot of space. So you may need to clear out, you know, room on here if you do want to add titles or remove some of the ones in here. I don't know. I'm sure God of War Collection is massive, as well as God of War 3. Not sure if this one takes up a whole lot of space, so deleting it may not free up much space, but that's the entire setup here. So let's dive into some games on here, test out the performance. I'm going to go into the higher end collections. I'm not going to spend time on like NES or Super Nintendo, stuff that, you know, you could get running on a single board computer. I want to do the more challenging stuff. So we'll jump into a handful of titles, and then we'll jump out, and we are going to then take a look at what else is offered on this drive.
One for the road!
All right, guys, so we jumped out of RetroBat here. Good experience there gaming. So let's jump into Playnite. So all we have to do here is just double click on the Playnite folder. And if we scroll all the way down, we should be able to locate the application. Or maybe it's not all the way down. Let me see, is it right here? There we go. Desktop, app, and then type applications. We're just going to double click on that, let it load in, and we'll see what we've got in here. All right, so here we are in Playnite. All of our titles are listed on the left-hand side. So we have a bunch of different ones here. We have some Final Fantasy down here, God of War, Grand Theft Auto 3, Grand Theft Auto 5, Hollow Knight. We've got Grand Theft Auto Vice City, the Definitive Edition, right? Is that what it is? Yeah, Definitive Edition. We've got Lego Star Wars. We've got Little Nightmares 1 and 2. Those are good games. Marvel Spider-Man Remastered, Mega Man X. What else do we have down here? Samurai Shodown Neo Geo Collection. Lots of great titles here. So WRC 8 is good. Vampire Survivors. And we skipped a bunch up here at the top, so let me go up this way. Capcom Fighting Collection. We've got Beat Me, Battletoads, Assassin's Creed 3 Remastered, Airborne Kingdom. So lots of great stuff, and this is obviously much more recent stuff for the most part. So we'll dive into a couple titles and test out the performance over here.
Don't blame me, blame society. That's my paint job. You and me, pal. I'm having that.
Father,
What?
did something change? The forest feels different now.
Everything is different, boy. Try not to dwell on it.
Yes, sir.
All right, guys, so we jumped in here, we unboxed this, and the first thing that I noticed was the enclosure that the SSD is installed in. It is high quality, very easy to open up, very easy to close back up. So if you need to make changes to your SSD, back up your SSD, anything within here, it's easy to access, even easier to get everything back together again. So that's not always the case. So excellent that that is the case here. Now, we have Playnite on one side, we have RetroBat on the other, and to access both of those, it's very simple. You simply connect this device to your PC, either through the USB A to USB-C connection or USB-C to USB-C connection, depending on what ports you have available on your PC. From there, you just simply open up the folders. You can do the quick install to install what's needed to actually play your games. And then you could dive into your games within minutes, if not seconds, in all honesty. Very easy to jump into everything. Now, I'm a bigger fan of RetroBat, so I spent the majority of my time on that side. But I've tested out games on both ends, and everything does work extremely well on here. It's very good performance. Of course, that's going to depend on what you're using this with. The better PC you have, the better your experience is going to be. And if you don't have a gaming PC, some of those titles on Playnite is going to be impossible, as well as the more advanced titles on the RetroBat side. So just worth mentioning, make sure that you're using this with a PC that has decent enough specs to handle the games you want to play. So the only downside that I found on the RetroBat side was the layout in some of the collections. Some of the collections seemed like it was just thrown together. I don't like the fact that it has box art on the left, right, and center for a lot of those collections. It just makes it very hard to actually locate titles that you want to play. Some of them aren't labeled, not that they're labeled wrong, but some of them are labeled the way they would have been labeled on a Japanese release as opposed to English. So again, that could hinder, your experience when trying to find some of your favorite titles. Luckily, that's not the case for everything, but certainly some titles are harder to find than others. So something to consider. Another thing is a lot of the collections do have a lot of duplicate titles. And then we did have one collection that was doubled up on. So we had the Super Game Boy and Game Boy Color, which were the exact same collection. So, the total number of games advertised here, you have to take with a grain of salt. I found that it's not accurate at all. But, at the end of the day, I kind of expected that. And sometimes, it's just something that you have to deal with when getting a plug and play setup like this. Just, obviously don't hold them to that exact number of games. That's the exact number of ROMs on there, but there are duplicates. So yeah, I find that it's much less than what's advertised. If there's 38,500 or so games on here, the true number is probably about 5,000 or 6,000 less than that, just because there's duplicates on a lot of these collections. And then we have that one collection that I think was like 1,200 or so games that is just obviously doubled up on. So right there you have 1,200 extra games added to your overall list that aren't accurate. At the end of the day, it is what it is. But the games do perform really well on here, so it's still a great way to dive into retro gaming, without having to do all the legwork and locate all your ROMs, set everything up, configure everything, scrape everything. So if you like the way that it looks, and I can vouch for the performance on here being good, it's definitely a slam dunk, and it's going to save you a lot of time getting started. And even if you want to go in and you want to customize things or make changes to what's scraped, how it appears, all that stuff, you definitely have already saved a lot of time not having to go out and gather all your ROMs and bring all that stuff together. So if you do have to make some customizations on your own, it's certainly not a deal breaker in my opinion, and you're still saving yourself a tremendous amount of time on here. So I do recommend this in the end. It was a good experience with the gaming portion of this. So I will give you guys a link up here at the top of your screen. Same thing down here in the description of this video. So click through, get some additional information at the very least. That's going to do it for today though. Let me know what you guys thought of this SSD right here, what it has to offer, what the experience is like on here. Let me know in the comments section below. That's going to do it though. Thank you guys so much for your time. Be sure to hit subscribe to stay in the loop for all future videos.